So the universe is, or could be, like an electron or a proton in a nucleus, or a neutron universe, or a proton universe, or an electron universe. That is literally all the 2 trillion stars. That's the 4% of the visible universe, and the dark matter, dark energy efficiency, the 99.99% plasma, everything, all the fermions, all the everything, the photons, the every particle, everything in the universe is all just an electron that is orbiting another universe itself. And this universe itself is also like a proton or a neutron, or could be like a subatomic particle. And you see, our universe could have been born from another universe which is like a subatomic particle, and itself is like a subatomic particle. So the universe is like a subatomic particle within a cell of an organism or an unimaginable being which is huge and can't be imagined. Now, what I believe the brains are doing is that the brains are producing charges. The brains are like observers and particles. The brains are particles, like universes. The universe is like an atom, and everything in the universe is an atom, and everything is a particle. Okay, and that means that the brain is also like a particle or like an atom, and is an observer. And every single observer is an observer. Okay, that means that the brain is an observer, and is a wave. It has a wave field and as a wave form, right? That means that the wave fields are the atom wave fields, and this is the wave field of the atoms. The universe is an atom, the earth is an atom, the galaxy is an atom, your brain is an atom, you are an atom, we are all atoms, everything is an atom. That means there are more atoms in just one of your eyes than stars in the whole universe. So that means there are more atoms than even everything. Everything's an atom. Everything is just atoms, 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 atoms. So that means that the universe itself is now being said to be like an atom spinning around a different atom, which is like an electron spinning around a proton if it's found to be negative. And if it's found to be positive, we know it's a proton. If it's found to be neutral, based on the cosmological constants which are proven that the multiverse exists, because the constants can't be just for this universe. It can't be just that way for this universe. That's why we believe a multiverse has to exist, because all those ratios and golden ratios and cosmological constants and speed of light, it can't just be that way for this universe. There has to be a set of laws that this universe in specific obeys. Do you understand? That means that's why we are predicting that there could be other universes, and the cosmic microwave background and everything with the redshift. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things that explain that this universe could be nothing but an atom within like an atom itself, or within a cell of a mega structure. Okay, so let's assume the whole universe as we know, the 100%, is a cell, or is an atom cell with a wave path or a wave field or a wave path. That means that many spinning vortices within the atom. Okay, there are many spinning vortices within the atom. Okay, that means the universe has multiple spinning vortices, and there are probabilities of almost 1,000 exploding stars within this wave vortex. And the atom is nothing but space, 99.9% space, 99.999% space, and the 1% is the matter that we know exists. And we know matter accumulates, matter occupies space. Okay, that means matter is accumulating by entropy and also by consumption and biosis and meiosis and mitosis. And we know all of this is how matter accumulates and spreads and splits. That means this is how it happens, and we know that that's how the unicellular becomes the multicellular. And it's like the whole universe is like atoms within a cell, within an individual being, like a brain, which is like your brain. It could be your brain. That's your brain, or your one eye just seeing something. Okay, now that's your one eye just looking at something. That's the whole universe, or within your brain. Now that's the observer's perspective. There are many observer's perspectives. The observer's perspective goes into multiple dimensions. It's almost circular. It goes up, down, left, right, backwards, forwards. It goes sideways and diagonally. And this is the observer's perspective. The observer's perspective goes different ways in multiple universes or multiple perspectives, and it's always having probabilities of exploding stars. It's having probabilities of exploding stars. And these probability distributions of the atoms within the wave field, or the wave function, okay, is to me disproving general relativity and quantum mechanics. Because here's the thing: if the atoms are spatially spread across the wave, like every single point within the wave has atoms, that means that the atom itself is full of waves, and the wave itself is full of atoms, meaning that if you beam that laser through the double slit, it's not going to form multiple slits at the background, but it's actually going to form a full beam, like a whole reflection. Like the whole background is supposed to be filled with light, and not just the double slit or the multiple reflections, but it's supposed to be the whole background filled with light, simply because of the different ways light is supposed to work. Meaning that there are different types of light, and light could not only be contained within packets, basically the photon. It's not basically only the photon packets that contain light. And with the photoelectric effect, nobody knows or could understand what that means, because if photons have electricity, that means biophotons, everything is multiple. Like everything is multiple. And with reality, we can't really understand reality, because we have to factor in time, space, the mind, consciousness. We have to factor in all those realms. We have to understand them perfectly, and understand knowledge itself, and understand the nature of knowing things before we understand reality. So, we say that the atom is the least thing we can divide material into, is the least subdivisible material. That means that's the least thing that can be divided. So that's what separates us from nothing. Literally, the atom is what separates us from being nothing. So that's what, according to Oppenheimer, is convincing you that you are not passing through the chair, or you are not actually passing through the ground, or you are actually standing on the ground. Anyway, that's for a different theory. Now we know there's gravity. Gravity based on speed and accumulation of matter. The boson accumulates matter. Higgs boson gives mass, and we know many types of bosons. The photon is a boson. We have fermions, which have mass, and nobody understands how fermions have mass, because they are neutrinos. And everything makes sense, but doesn't really make sense. So, according to the theory of general relativity, space and time are a continuum. That means that space and time are a specific matrix. There is a metric that defines space and time. Without space, there will be no time, and without time, there will be no space, according to Albert Einstein. Meaning that without even movement, there can be no time, and without movement, there can be no space. But here's the thing: matter accumulates and space diminishes. Light bends around matter. Now we know specifically that there's no place which is a time, and there's no time which is a place. As in, there's no place on earth which is called 1 o'clock, or there's no place, or there's no time, which is called Jupiter or Earth. There's no such thing. So why is space and time a continuum, and why are space and time the same thing? Because we know space and time have to be different variables, right? But he's saying it's the same thing. But that's for a different discussion. If you think deeply into the discussion, you know that space and time are different variables. They are different variables, meaning that you can have space without time and time without space. And that's atomless space and spaceless time and timeless space. And and this is madness to think about because people haven't thought about it yet. So the world as we know it doesn't make a lot of sense, because if a butterfly lands on a flower, everybody believes, oh, look at this beautiful butterfly, it has landed on the flower. But we forget that if a butterfly lands on you, you might feel discomfort and you would actually brush it off. It will be there for a long time. It might be there for some time because it's a butterfly, you like it, but eventually you brush it off. It will not be on your body forever. That's the whole point. And also, but the second point is the butterfly being on that flower, and you are seeing it to be so beautiful, may not be so beautiful because that flower may be in discomfort. And that's the whole chaos theory, because the butterfly itself is looking for a resting place and there's no real resting place. So it finds the flower as the resting place. The flower itself is in discomfort. Now here is why this is interesting. It's interesting because if you think about the microscopic world and the Schrodinger's effect and the Schrodinger's wave theory and Schrodinger's cat, the cat is in the box and the butterfly effect, basically the uncertainty principle. Okay, so we know the cat has to become the butterfly in order to be free. Okay, and the snake has to become the cat in order to be free, and the butterfly has to become the snake in order to be free. So this is the whole cycle of life, whereby they all need to become each other in order to be free. We need RNA to produce DNA. We need proteins to produce RNA, and we need DNA to produce what? We need RNA to produce DNA. We need proteins to produce RNA, and we need DNA to produce proteins. So the whole theory is confusing. How is everything produced? So the chicken and the egg, which one came first? You need to know that the chicken in that description describes man himself. The chicken is the sperm and the egg is the female. So the question is not really about the chicken and the egg. It's more about the male and the female. Which one came first? That's the actual question. That's where that question comes from. It's not about whether the female and the baby came first. It's more about the man and the woman. Which one? The sperm and the egg. Because we need both. Anyway, so we don't really need both. That's the whole point. Is just a consequence of life, or
It's like a byproduct of life that we actually have to have both for multicellular reproduction. But that's just for a byproduct of life, because single cells just divide and meiosis and mitosis and meiosis, and you know everything. You know everything about the phases of 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 cellular division. Now, what is interesting here is that simultaneous big bangs from the center of the universe lead to its expansion. Now, what does that mean? That means that there are two atoms. There's the first atom and then the last atom. That is the whole assumption. That's the sensible conclusion from this whole theory of quantum mechanics and relativity, that there must be a first atom and then a last atom which will exist. The first atom which existed and then the last atom which existed. So these exist and we know they are true and stuck in the quantum entanglements in time, which is a ratio which can be subdivided and found. Now, on the Planck length, basically, if you subdivide the Planck length, but that's something else. But we know the atoms, they exist. The first one and then the last one, they exist. So we call the first one the alpha atom, we call the last one the omega atom. Now, how do we know the alpha atom and then the omega atom and their properties? What are they? So we know that they reflect. Their reflections on each other produce the simultaneous big bangs, which lead to the expansion of the universe, and the other stars and the other atoms and the infinite atoms being produced are because of these two random probable atoms, these two random probability of atoms. They're all being produced because of these two random probabilities, and it's very fascinating. Anyway, so we know the alpha atom produces the microbial life or the microcosm. That's the infinite atoms in space. And then the omega atom, that's the last atom, that produces the megastructures. That's the macrocosm, the stars and then the superstructures in space. That's the infinite reflection of atoms, because the small becomes the big and then the big becomes the small. It's just an infinite reflection. And then the universe is also an infinite reflection of this in like a smaller way, in a different dimension, because it's in a different dimension and it's orbiting around a different particle, which is also called a universe, and it's also orbiting around a different particle which is called a universe, and there are infinite of these within that mega structure called that cosmological being which can't be known, that infinite random non-secular being or non-cognizable being which can't be known in space, or which is beyond space and time. This is the being which is beyond space and time and leads to the creation of the other dimensions and then the other universes. With this being, its powers to be that it can create its own universes. It can create universes out of nothing, because it's like the universes are atoms within it, and it can create universes and black holes and anything it wants out of anything. Now we ask the question, why is light so fast, and why is it a cosmological constant, and why does it have the precise speed it does? Okay, now we need to know certain things about light. That it is not necessarily what causes vision, because infrared causes vision, ultraviolet causes vision, blue light causes vision, white light causes vision, red light causes vision, and we know dark horns, which are the particle of darkness, which are hypothetical particles which haven't been found, may also have different properties within dark matter and dark energy which we don't know yet, and beings that might be able to perceive this, and other ethereal forms which can be perceived. So we don't know if light is the only visible thing. Okay, now we know light is visible. That's one thing we know, and we know it's very fast. Light can move around the earth in less than 1 second. Okay, that means that light can move around the whole earth in less than 1 second. Okay, the sun's light takes 8 minutes to reach us, and the closest star to us probably takes less than a light year, or maybe probably 1 light year to reach us. So a light year is probably the time it takes light to travel in a whole year, and that's like the distance light will travel in a whole year. And if light travels 360 something thousand miles per hour, per second, then we know that it travels 360,000 kilometers per second. That means, or miles per second. That means the sun is roughly 100 million kilometers from us. Okay, roughly 100 million kilometers from us. That's why it says 8 minutes. So that means if it's 1 light year, you have to know that is the 8 minutes of the sun's light compared to that 1 light year. So that distance of 1 light year is like the distance. Okay, so that's what we know. Okay. Now, this is incredible because we know that the universe is huge and vast. And why and how are we saying it's an atom? And what is the last or the lasting period or the duration of the universe? How do we know all this? And why do we say infinity is multiple? Why do we say infinity is multiple? And why do we say infinity is singular? Okay, now why are we saying this? Now we know infinity is something hoped for because it's just a dream. Okay, if we say infinity is just a dream, what do we mean? It's something hoped for because it's something we don't know. So what is it? Something we just hope for. Now it's something we can't know also. So it's just a dream. We just hope for it, and it can't be known. It can't be achieved. So that's the thing. Now we know it's an endless count. As soon as it is known, we know it is not infinity. So what is it? It's just something hoped for. So if we say this is the field, it's an infinite field, and we are trying to count the individual blades of grass, and we say it's a field. We know it can't be an infinite field because it's a field. That means it has to be finite. But it's actually an infinite field because we are assuming it can't be known. Okay, so where is the rest? Where is the rest of the blades of grass that we can count? We are assuming that they are missing, or they must be somewhere that can't be found. That means they are missing, which is the basic assumption of infinity. The rest of infinity is missing and can be found. That is the whole reason why we are saying that it is singular and multiple. So if it can be found, we know it is 2 infinities or different infinities, many infinities, which can be found. And numbers are huge, but can't make sense or can't be understood if we want to understand them. Because the powers of numbers alone should blow your brain away in algebra. Okay, now that's all I'm saying, right? Okay, now and also in our derivatives, I'm trying to find the derivatives or the finding for balance, the effect of balance and entropy, or the effect of balance and entropy on growth, or the effect of growth and balance on entropy, and the effect of that on the whole cosmological constants, the effect of balance and entropy. Okay, now we saw that the total force divided by the total weight of the object was less than the large object and the light object. And 2, the large object was lighter when divided by the total force as compared to the lighter object, which was heavier. So therefore, the computation is such that large object is greater than total force, and the light object is equal to the large object. Okay, now that means if you understand this, you are going to understand that so what are we saying? Basically, we try to find the singularity, the effect of balance on entropy. Now we found that the reason why the bigger object rose first before the smaller object on the lever was because the bigger object was actually lighter than the smaller object, which is counterintuitive, because the counterintuitive aspect is the fact that the smaller object moved second is because it was heavier. That's the counterintuitive aspect, but that's what makes sense in this world. What doesn't make sense is what makes sense. Try to tip the balance and you get tipped off the balance. That is what happens. So you see, this is the whole point of life. You don't stand in energy's way, no matter how small. You see, this is the whole point of life. Nobody understands the whole thing, because now we are going to talk about multicellular organisms and inorganic matter, and basically abiosis and the other concepts which we neglected in the first part of the talk. Now, we saw that the equations on smoothness and why things solidity, why solids are smooth, doesn't really make sense, and then Navier-Stokes equation has to be solved, right? And we saw that the spin states of these atoms, the electro-proto-neutral state, and then the proto-electro-neutral state of the atoms, the alpha and omega atoms, explain for smoothness perfectly. But what happened is that we saw solids were just explosions waiting to happen. That means any solid is just an explosion waiting to happen. It's not really a solid, but it's just an explosion waiting to happen when you add or include a new material to it, such as hydrogen or nitrogen. That means it will just explode immediately depending on the solid. And that is why solids are explosions waiting to happen. And that's why, you see, we understand everything so perfectly, and it makes a lot of sense, because the spaces within the solids are much closer. The spaces within the atoms of the solid are much smaller, which is why the atom is actually the solid is actually perceived to be solid. You know that. Now we say that why is this smooth? We know it's smooth because of the adhesive forces and cohesive forces within the atom, and then the molecules of the atom. But what we don't perceive here is something which is very strange, which is the whole subdivided bracket, the bracket of subdivision of these two total forces. You know, when we say that let's say for something to be solid, its material has to be condensed, or it has to be compact together. That means it's just an explosion waiting to happen. And we found the meaning of things to be much different, because the smoothness of things is reliant upon the concatenation of strings. The concatenation of strings within the consciousness, which grows when new thoughts are accumulated. This is why the brain accumulates new matter, and this is why it expands over time. And this is why things are perceived to be solid, and this is why solids themselves are perceived as solid. Meanwhile, the reality is what is solidifying. No, the solid is not solidifying, but the reality is solidifying the solid. That means that we perceive all these things we discover, the particles and forces that we discover, to be not things that were byproducts of the universe, but things that were used to create the universe. Now, if you think about it this way, and you think of the universe to be an art form instead of a science, then everything becomes much freer to understand. But even though you can't say that unicorns or pink unicorns with white horns are what caused the subatomic matter to bifurcate or to exist at a quantum fields to actually collapse. That's not what you can say, because you are saying that the universe is an art form. But rather, you can say that the sounds of the solids are much more different to perceive within different frequencies, because the different frequencies of the sounds being produced by the solid, and they are what creates the solid. Being produced by, being produced by, and producing. Probably the same thing in this scenario, but you see, it's a human understanding. So now, okay, you see, now you're asking where from the creation of matter? Where from the creation of matter, and what is the quintessential essence of all matter? This is the question we are asking, and these are the questions which need to be answered. Okay, so what is the creation of matter, and where from the creation of matter, and what is the quintessential essence of all matter? Now we see that the creation of all matter, if we say all matter is 99.99% space and just 1% matter, and we are saying that that 1% matter is a spinning vortex of atoms within atoms, which are atomic probabilities of 1,000 probable exploding stars, okay, within that spinning vortex of non-probable space. And we are saying that this is one atom which is in the universe, or one universe, okay, within a probable perspective or a probable dimension, right? Now that's one universe, okay, down, that's one cluster or one atom, okay, one singular atomic probability. Now we are saying that what creates this probability besides the concatenation of strings and the wavelengths that exists? Okay, we know the atoms are spatially distributed perfectly within the waveform or within the wavelength. Okay, now that means that within the particle wave duality, what exists as the photoelectric effects? This is the question that has to be known. The first answer was that black body radiation, or black bodies, produce an infinite radiation. That means the black hole singularity has infinite mass. But then when the mass is infinite and it keeps warping space, what does that produce? That produces an infinite black hole in space, whereby the universe itself is going to be consumed by this black hole. Okay, now is this the truth? That is not the truth, because the infinite black hole is just a singular point, a singular small infinitesimally subdivisible point within that space, which is very small, which can't be even perceived, as big as the black hole gets within that space. Okay, so it is even inconsequential, or not really inconsequential, but it's more subdivisible to the whole matter. So that means that black hole can consume a lot of mass, and it will consume a lot of galaxies, a lot of universes, and teleport the universe into another dimension, basically. But it is still a small point within the cosmic perpetuum, or the whole cosmos, or the whole cosmos, you know, the whole cosmic perpetuum, you know, the momentum of the cosmos. It can't be known because it is just a small point. So it's like a point in the brain which is just expanding, but it's within a singular cell, within an atom, and it's just expanding within the cell and within the atom. And these are things which are happening within you which you can't perceive, but there are fields within fields, and you have to know them. And if you go into the subatomic fields, if there was a way you could invent the pin particle and go into the subatomic fields and see the things that are happening within the quantum realm or the subatomic matter, and see how things are being created, then you see that thoughts themselves, imagination, the more you explore, the more you realize that imagination creates reality. Because where from, look at your hands, look at your palms, look into your palms for a long time, for 5 seconds, and what do you realize? You realize your palms are staring at you. Okay, now this is the whole universe. Now your palms are greater than the whole universe. Your single finger is greater than the whole universe, and the whole universe is balancing on your single finger, according to this theory. And according to this theory, 10 raised to the power 80 meters from here, or probably just a few meters more than that, compared to the Planck length. There is your alternate version on the subordinate subatomic level, which is your ordinance, or your other ordinance, which is your other self, in a different alternate dimension, which is looking just like you right here, right now, just like you and it being quantumly entangled, and you and it being so far from each other in space as particles, being quantumly entangled. And you can actually bombard each other at any time in cosmic space depending on your momentum. This is not even your momentum, but the momentum of the cosmos or the cosmic being, which is non-perceivable, which can't be perceived. So this is something which we can't perceive. Do you understand? So no matter how you look at it, it's something which you can't perceive, because where from the atom, and why does it need to consume, and what is it consuming? And the fact that it is consuming means something has to be there, and if something is there, that means it is there, and something also is also there. We don't need it, but we need it for another thing to be there. So we say we need one of it, but we need another for another to be there. And why does another have to be there? It just has to be there so that another will be there, so that there will be another, so that because there's another, there's now another. Do you understand? That's the whole point of another. So that's the whole point, because it has to be there so that there will be another. And where is it from? That is the question we are asking, which can't be answered by this theory. But it says that it is an infinite reflection of the two of these probabilities, which are always creating the reality which we know. And the brains or the observers are creating charges which are charging and emitting against each other and forming a matrix, which we are perceiving as a matrix of this world, which is the reality which we perceive. And even something as small as an ant, okay, is moving the whole universe with even every single movement, even a singular atom, every single movement. The universe follows the movement of every single atom, even an ant. The universe is following even an ant. And think about how marvelous that is, because an ant can never be able to even probably pull the weight of probably an orange. But you will lift an orange just very easily and consume it. But an ant can never lift an orange. But it's the universe itself, the force of the whole universe is following the ant. So isn't that wonderful? What does solidity entail? And what does this unimaginable consequence of reality mean? This is what we're trying to explore. Okay, now, it means the brain itself, as Dr. Manhattan said. Dr. Manhattan once said that life and death are both quantifiable forms, because the number of atoms that exist in a dead body are the same as the number of atoms that exist in a living body. That means life and death are both quantifiable forms, so they mean nothing to him, which is the science behind this whole marvelous theory. Because now you are saying that the soul is lost. Now you are saying that the soul is lost and it has gone into the quantum realm or the quantum reality. But where from this quantum reality or this consciousness or this soul, and where is it going? You see, based on your body's wear and tear, or the specific gravitational propulsion based on your gravitational frequency, or what I'm saying is the inability of your body to achieve the perfect mechanism or the perfect perpetual motion is what is actually failing you to actually live forever. And that is what is making you die in the first place. And that thing is failing you, and you are failing, or you are failing it, or you are failing. So you are failing the whole thing. That means that you are failing. Okay, that means you are failing. Okay, so you are failing. And your soul is not leaving you, but you are actually failing to comply with the whole algorithmic nature of what is around you, or the consequence of space. You are failing to comply because your body has now outgrown its capacity to move itself, or to even move itself within that space based on your aging. Aging can be defeated in many ways, okay? But you have not been able to defeat that aging. That's why you are failing. Okay. So you are failing. Now, if you had telomerase, or a whole lot of telomerase, abundant telomerase, that will make you an immortal being, and you'll be young forever. But now you have to think of a way to protect yourself, or an infinite armor like graphene or carbonite or tungsten, which will make you strong forever. Okay, now if you think about all these things, these are marvelous achievements of man, because we know the cell itself is struggling for immortality within a dominant paradigm, or a dominant matrix paradigm, which is failing, because it is a dystopia which is failing itself. That is why the cell has to reproduce or find immortality, because it doesn't even need to do all these things. It's trying to find itself, it's trying to understand itself. So what is trying to understand itself? That's the question. What is trying to understand itself? And what is trying to understand itself? Now that's the question. You understand? Now, if you know this, then you probably know everything about what I'm trying to tell you. Because the question is, what are you? And what are you doing here? What are you trying to do? Trying to understand all these things. There's a quantum realm, and there's a quantum probability of your existence. You defy all those probabilities, and that is why you are here. The same probabilities of you existing are the same probabilities of you not existing. Because think about it. If the probabilities of you existing right here on this earth right now is 1 out of, let's say, 7 billion humans, let's say 11 billion humans, or 9 billion humans, that's 1 out of 9 billion humans. That's your probability of being alive. And that's also your probability of not being alive. That's 1 out of 9 billion humans. That means you are 1 out of 9 billion probability of being alive, and you are alive because of that 1 out of 9 billion probability also, which is very crazy, because your probability of being alive is the same probability of you not being alive. Okay, so that means that everything is crazy in that sense, because you can't think about time in that way. You can't think about time in terms of mortality, because any being can transcend time. So it doesn't matter what moments in time you appear. So it depends on when you transcend time, not when you appear in time. So when you transcend time, you're actually no more concerned about time, and time doesn't concern you. So you are no longer concerned with time. So it doesn't matter when you came within that time. Do you understand? So that is the whole point. Okay, this discussion has gone further and far enough, and I know I'm blowing a lot of people's brains right now without saying much and knowing what the hell I'm talking about, even introducing myself, or even telling them what the hell I'm talking about or what the hell I'm saying. But this is scientific talk, to enlighten or to elucidate the perspectives of certain things in mathematics and science. You know, certain things such as the standard model or the unified theory of science, which is being strived towards. Now, if we find certain things, such as certain things concerning the molecular structure of organisms, and why the math and the codes and the programs compute and the probabilities compute this way, then we'll be able to find out why the computation, the quantum collapse of particles will not be able to form another quantum wave function, or it will be able to form another quantum wave function. Now we know it will be able to form another quantum wave function based on the variables. Okay, now we are saying that it will be able to form another quantum wave function after the collapse. But if you are able to build a quantum computer, or you're able to formulate a quantum algorithm for a quantum computer or a quantum program that is able to run on quantum superposition or quantum entanglement, and these two properties, such that quantum computers and classical computers run on, or even classical supercomputers run on, then what you are going to realize is that it's going to be subject to quantum collapse, because these two properties of quantum entanglement and quantum superposition are subject to quantum collapse. So that means your computer will be subject to quantum collapse, and you have to find the algorithm to defeat quantum collapse, which is something you have to understand is a very difficult thing to achieve. Which is why your lights might go off and might come back on, not because someone is somewhere controlling your lights, but because there's a quantum probability for the quantum distribution of this single particle which is being produced. Okay, it is being produced, so you know there's a spatial distribution, so there's a quantum probability, and that is the whole point. It is everywhere at the same time, but it's also not everywhere at the same time. So that is the whole probability distribution. So you see, that is why your light will go off and it will come on, but somewhere it might not go off for a very long time because of the distribution. And if you have enough energy to supply your energy capacity or your energy demand, then you can go on and build or develop your community from there. But if you don't have enough energy to meet your demand, then you have to actually quantumize your supply. You understand? Or quantize your supply. So that's the whole point of quantization, because even after we found all those things, from the very times that we found all those programs to be real within the matrix of brains or quantum probabilities, we saw that these things are not only real, but they determine everything, including even your heartbeat. Okay, your heartbeat is determined by gravitational pressure, and that means if you were somewhere else, your heartbeat will be different. Okay, that also means you don't control much, but much controls you, and you are here based on certain factors, and you control only the things you control, but you only control what you control. And with control, we know we are talking about control. When we are talking about control, what is control? Because we know there's the control of one being making another being do what that being wants. That is that form of control. Now, if this form of control is such that you are going to trap the elements, okay, and try to control it and make it do what you want, then you have to understand that with control, you cannot control anything at all, because even if it's doing what you want or what you require, if you are able to mend the elements to your ways, or to bend the elements to your ways, you are not really controlling much, because the only type of control is self-control. And I know I'm going to sound a bit preachy here, but the only type of control is self-control. Because if you're able to control yourself, and by self I mean the cells within your body, and these microorganisms and these little atoms within every single part of your body, your organism, then you can actually control everything and you don't need to control your surroundings, but all you need to do is to control yourself. Okay, now cellular mutation. Now that's what I'm talking about, and we're talking about evolution. Why do cells evolve? Cells evolve because cells don't get used to unusual situations. Used to in quotes. They don't get used to unusual situations. Unusual situations in quotes. They don't get used to unusual situations, but they adapt and evolve and never have to deal with those unusual situations again. That's why cells evolve, because cells don't get used. They just don't get used to unusual situations. It's not that way. They adapt and they never have to deal with that unusual situation ever again. That is what happens all the time to all these cells. Okay, now this is the evolution of symbiosis and epiphytism and pests and parasitism and all this, everything we know and everything we know about organisms. This is what governs evolution basically. So what am I saying here? I'm saying a lot. Okay,